Hello and welcome to The Current State. My name is Dhruv, I'm joined by Qasim here, and for the first time we have a special guest with us today. Nandan, how are you, mate?
Thanks for the introduction, Dhruv. I'm really excited to be here on The Current State pod with you two. I just can't wait to get into the topics of today.
We're very happy to have you here, Nandan, and let's get straight into it. So first up, we have the ongoing political and economic crisis in France. Nandan, can you explain what is the actual cause of this crisis?
So the cause of the crisis is the looming debt in France. Well, that's the underlying cause, is the looming debt in France. Right now it totals about 113, 114% of GDP, and which is obviously not ideal. France has to pass through a budget which is failing to do right now because of its parliamentary structure and the makeup of the National Assembly. There's about, I'm sure you know the numbers, about 180 from the left wing, 165 from the centre, and 145 from the far right, with 50 or 40 of the Republicans as well, Chirac's sort of party. There is a problem in France that because of this three-way split of the parliament with a fourth kind of side party, that nothing can really get through Parliament, because right now Macron, the president, has been picking centrist prime ministers like Le Cornu or Bayrou, and they just keep getting voted down by the left and the right, who obviously have very different visions of how to solve the budgetary crisis in France. This crisis is a very big one, and it's not one that I see Macron being able to solve easily. So it's not really looking great for France, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the economic problems that France is experiencing here, you can somewhat compare it to what happened in Europe in the 1930s, following the Great Depression in 1929. So that period of instability in the continent, which led to extreme parties being able to come into power. So, such as Mussolini in Italy, or even Adolf Hitler in Germany. Is that something similar? Is there something similar going on now, do you think?
I definitely think so, and I don't think that's only in France. I think it extends to even the UK, to Italy, to Austria, to Germany with the AfD. In the UK, obviously, we have the Reform Party, who were nobodies before the last election, but now are polling above Labour, above the Conservatives, traditionally very, very big parties. And I think we can definitely draw the conclusion that this rise of the far right has something to do with the inflationary crisis of 2022, which was arguably caused by, well, definitely triggered by the Russia-Ukraine war, but also from 2008, with the global financial crash, we definitely saw the rise of extremism there as well. So I think your assessment is correct.
Yeah, I think you can also, as an example of a party that's actually in power right now, if you go over to Italy, you have the far-right party which is in power, and that is the most far-right party that we've seen in power in Europe since the end of the Second World War. So that's another example which you can see happening right now, which does show the trends, perhaps, which are happening because of the economic problems.
But I agree with you in Western Europe. That Italy is Meloni is definitely a very, very politician. But I would say there's Orban in Hungary, he's even far right in a more authoritarian sense, in that he's shut down freedom of speech in many ways, and he's very big on anti-immigration stances. But I agree with you that this Italian government is also quite far to the right. There's a danger of that happening in France too, and that's why Macron doesn't want to, or hasn't yet at least, called an election of the National Assembly again after the 2024 one. And people are at least speculating, and it's pretty certain that this is because the far right are very likely to gain a very big share of the parliament, perhaps even an absolute majority, what Macron lost in 2022, which would lead to great economic toil in France, because I don't think the far right's solutions are what is needed for France at the moment.
Yeah, I also think that Macron, I don't know. I don't think he would I think he said that he wants to run until his full term ends in 2027. And I also think that it would be he would anger many of his centrist party members if he appointed someone from the left wing or the right wing as well. I don't think he would want to do that. So I think that's probably not the solution he's going to choose. Do you think that in the UK we are seeing something quite similar? Obviously, we have been running a budget deficit for many years, and obviously from that we owe a lot of debt. I don't think it's to the same kind of level at the moment, but do you think in the future it could probably rise?
Just one thing I want to correct on that. You talked about how Macron wouldn't want to resign before his 2027 election, which is where he'll have to step down because of France's constitution. What I was talking about there was the parliament, so the National Assembly, which is separate from the presidential elections. Yeah.
So different parliaments.
Yeah, but I don't think that's likely either, because I think Macron wants to hold on to the power that he has. Yeah. Kind of the nature of a politician to do that. Talking about Britain, I definitely think that this could happen. As we talked about, France's debt to GDP ratio is 113%, 114%. Here, it's in the 90s, almost at 100. It was at 100 and it's come down a little bit. But if we keep running budget deficits, it's likely that we get to the point where, as they're talking about in France right now, we had to go to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, or somewhere else to get the money to fund our deficit, because the problem with running a massive deficit is that bond rates and coupon rates will go up massively, because people won't want to lend you the money if you're not able to raise it in taxation. So there's a danger of that happening here in the UK as well, maybe later on. And that's why lots of economists are seeing what's happening in France right now as foreshadowing what is to come in the UK.
I think one of the reasons as well, if you look at why Europe is facing so many financial struggles, I mean, obviously they were running budget deficits. They've been running budget deficits for a long time. But the Russia-Ukraine war has kind of accelerated that. It's driven many prices up, such as oil, for example. So do you think this has a greater impact on the economic problems?
Well, I think it's undeniable that the Russia-Ukraine war did obviously have an impact on global supply chains, the import of oil as well. So oil prices went up massively.
So one final question. If you were in Emmanuel Macron's shoes right now, what choice would you make as to how to solve or finally pass the budget?
So first of all, I'd say those aren't the shoes I'd like to be in. He's in a very tough spot, perhaps by his own making. I think so. He has three main options. One, appoint someone from, four main options. One, appoint someone from the centre like he's been doing forever. I don't think that will work because the left and the right, as they've been doing, votes for no confidence, not allowing budgets to get through, perhaps for valid reasons. I'm not speculating on that. The second thing he could do would be appoint someone from the left. They have the biggest share in parliament, but it's still not an absolute majority, and they're very, very likely to experience votes of no confidence as well from the centre and from the right. The third thing, as I talked about, call a parliamentary election. The problem with that, of course, is the rise of the far right. They're very likely to win, maybe even an absolute majority. And the fourth option is what I think Macron should do, which is be the bigger man and step down. Yeah. He would have to resign anyway in 2027, as we've talked about. But if he does it now, as the majority of French people want, and of course his opposition parties want, it's probably about a 50-50 between a centrist and a far-right person, which is obviously not ideal odds, but it's probably what has to be done. The left are unlikely to get into power. Though Mélenchon is popular in parts of France, he's also seen, perhaps unfairly, I think unfairly, as an anti-Semite in some instances as well, especially with his support for Palestine.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Anand. That was very insightful. And I guess it does serve as a warning to other European countries of the rise of right-wing parties. Okay, moving on, we're going to be talking about Zack Polanski. For those of you who don't know who he is the current leader of the Green Party. And that's a party that you guys could say in recent days has been on the rise. What can you guys tell us about this?
Yeah, so since he took power in early September, there's actually been a really high upsurge in members. It's now up to 105,000, which is around 25,000 members increase, and they actually got more members than Lib Democrats themselves, which I think is quite crazy. And so obviously we know that the Green Party has a very strong aim of tackling the climate crisis, but Zack Polanski, an interesting thing that he does is he takes this from a different angle. And he uses his idea of eco-populism, which basically looks at targeting the big companies and governments by saying that it's actually them who are causing the climate crisis, and the effects of that are onto the working class and the ordinary people. And that's why he's moving away from telling the ordinary people to be recycling, turning off their lights, and using public transport, all this stuff. And he's going to mainly focus on targeting the what I said before, so the big governments and the big companies, especially all companies as well. He thinks that because they're influencing what the parliament is saying. So yeah.
I think Zack Polanski is an incredibly impressive person. Just from watching some of his stuff, you mentioned the upsurge in members up to 105,000, more than the Liberal Democrats, despite having 68 fewer seats in Parliament. Zack Polanski isn't even a member of Parliament yet. That's how impressive he is. His idea of eco-populism, I think we can clearly see the Green Party looking at the bigger picture a little bit more. They're looking to be a party that actually wins elections, perhaps forming a coalition with your party, the left-wing party, led by Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana. And I think it's a really positive move. We definitely have been lacking, especially with Labour moving a little bit more to the centre and perhaps to the centre-right. We've definitely been lacking a left-wing alternative in this country, and I think it's finally arrived.
Yeah, and also I think Zack Polanski is just such a great character, and I think that's definitely a reason why Green Party has seen the upsurge of members. He's a very commendable communicator, so he tries to simplify kind of diplomatic terms into simpler terms to appeal to like young audiences, which is a lot of members of the Green Party are very young. He also is very active on social media, so you can see him posting quite frequently on platforms like X and Instagram, where he will share members' stories. Like once they've said, "Oh, I've joined the party," and they post on their story, he will basically reshare every member, which shows his commitment as well. And I think he's been quite good on some very important shows. Don't you think, man?
Yeah, I think recently he's been on Piers Morgan. He's been on BBC Question Time, where he was pitted mostly against Reform Zia Youssef, and I think he did quite well in that battle. Talking about his use of social media, he's got a very... It's actually not really a distinct style. I think he's imitating aspects of New York's Zohran Mamdani, who's obviously been incredibly successful so far, winning the Democratic primary in the mayoral race, even though he was a nobody before. And I think it's definitely something that Zack Polanski has gained from imitating Zohran Mamdani. And I think if there are any similarities there, then we're looking at the Green Party making a massive run for some of the bigger parties like the Lib Dems.
Yeah, I think also, just going on from the social media tangent, the idea that social media is a key contributor to political campaigns, I think it's especially prevalent now. So most of the parties that have managed to come into power have had very successful social media campaigns. So the Labour won in their battle against the Conservatives earlier. They were very attractive, especially on social media. And another notable example is Donald Trump in America.
I would say yes. I think the Labour Party did win against the Conservatives in that battle. But I think if you look at the Labour Party Instagram, they kind of they post like memes and stuff, which I think it comes across as a bit childish, to be honest.
And I would say the main kind of political party who was making or maximising the use of social media has to be Reform UK.
Yeah.
If you see what they're posting on social media, there's loads of clips of Nigel Farage on various shows saying things that are quite short and snappy, which would catch attention.
I mean, Nigel Farage himself has, I think it's still true, that he has more TikTok followers than every other member of Parliament combined. Which of course is a massive contributor to their success. But it's a good point, Nigel Farage. While we've seen the rise of the left in the Green Party, we've also seen the rise of the right, or even the far right with Reform. So what do you guys think is contributing to their success?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the most recent pollings, I think Reform had around to that 29% figure of the polling, which is, I think Labour had 21%. That's 8% higher. That's very significant, and it's almost like the Conservatives are not really in the picture anymore. So if you were listening to the last Labour meeting, there's almost like Keir Starmer even joked about it, saying the Tories, who are they? Or almost suggesting that they're not that significant of a player anymore. So this just really shows the rise of parties such as Reform and the Green Party. And the reason for this is because, well, I think in Europe right now there's been quite a lot of economical struggles, and Reform pledges to solve these in a lot of ways. And there are many issues which they really focus on, which really connects with many of the people, such as immigration, for example. So that's one of the key things that Nigel Farage has promised to focus on. And he said a few things, such as, so he was commenting on one of the shows he went on earlier, that he would, he wouldn't focus on where he deports people to. He just do it. He just says that that's something that needs to be done as soon as possible.
Speaking of Conservative, the Green Party are actually almost about to overtake them as well in members. They only have around 5,000 or 10,000 more, so maybe in the next coming weeks we can see that change happen as well. Obviously, if you've listened to last week's episode as well, we discussed the Labour Party conference, and it was clear that Reform were highlighted as Labour's main enemy, rather than Conservative, which is what has always been traditionally. So I think it's and also so when Green Party do overtake, or if Green Party do overtake Conservatives, the top three will be Labour, Reform, and Green Party in that order, which is
one thing
quite
to say on members. While it's true that members do obviously show that more people are interested in the party, it might be worth noting that when Jeremy Corbyn was the leader of the Labour Party, they totaled 600,000 members, which is more than any party today. The Labour Party won't release their figures, but it's pretty obvious that it's below 600,000. And he didn't win an election. So membership doesn't tell us everything.
Yeah, it's all about the first past the post system. And that's actually why in the last election you saw Reform, they had obviously a massive percentage share, but they only, I think it was on 4 or 5 seats?
Yeah, 4 seats in the election.
Whereas Liberal Democrats, obviously they had a lower share, but they had, 60 or something.
72, I think.
Yeah. So that in fact shows that members, Nandan's right. Members is one thing, but they also need to focus on getting the MPs in Parliament.
Yeah, I think this shows the potential shake-up in British politics. Thank you, Qasim, Nandan. Thank you for your time, Nandan. It's been amazing having you on.
Yeah, we're going to say goodbye to Nandan.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Something else that was very important that happened in the news recently was the Nobel Peace Prize. The award has been given out, and we have a winner. Dhruv, who was it?
Yes, so obviously if you're unaware, the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize was Maria Machado, and she is the leader of the opposition in Venezuela right now. So Venezuela is currently under a dictatorship there's a lack of free speech and just a general oppression of press in the country. So she's been the person who's been trying to lead the charge, trying to free Venezuela from this dictatorship.
Yeah, so the dictatorship is very, very cruel. At the moment, it's being led by a person called Nicolas Maduro, and he's been in charge since 2013. So he's had a 12-year reign so far. And he has basically been absolutely horrible economically. One of the key mistakes he's made is the way he's managed oil. So if you didn't know, Venezuela actually has the largest oil reserves in the world, which is not what you expect. You obviously think, Middle Eastern country, right? But no, it's Venezuela. But the oil industry has been state-controlled for a very long time, and there's a lack of infrastructure in the oil industry, which has meant that the output levels of oil are very, very low. And so GDP has been shrinking. Since 2013, the GDP has actually halved. It's crazy to say this, but in 2018, inflation was actually 1 million %.
That's incredibly high. I don't think you really can see that in many other places in the world. And that obviously poses serious problems for the people of Venezuela.
Yeah. You can definitely liken this to a Stalin kind of government, because violence is being used everywhere. You can see gangs on the street. In fact, right now, Machado, who is actually under house arrest, and she is forced into hiding. So she basically can't escape out of the house. they basically trapped her down. They've also banned her from running for prime minister. So although she is the leader of the opposition, so she's the main like symbol, like she'll basically be the main symbolic figure for like rallies and speeches, but she's not actually the prime minister candidate because she's been banned. That's how much of a threat they see her. But if we go back to the idea of the Nobel Peace Prize being awarded to her, questions have been asked. Obviously, we've had Donald Trump doing a lot of things recently, and he's been nominated by a lot of countries. So, like, do you think maybe he could have won it? What do you think?
I mean, if you look at the stuff that Donald Trump's done this year, he claims to have solved a lot of wars. So if we just delve deeper into that, you can look at, for example, the India-Pakistan war, and you can look at the India-Pakistan war and how he dealt with that. So Pakistan claims that he had a significant role to play, but then you could somewhat argue that there may be alternative interests for Pakistan in nominating Donald Trump. So by nominating Donald Trump, they could get them on his good side, which Pakistan really need. They really need a superpower to support them, especially coming up especially for the next few years. Whilst India, they denied this, but you can also see motives for that. So, for example, India want to be seen as a superpower of the world. So, for them to say that they had to stop a conflict because of the actions of the President of the United States would weaken them somewhat, which is perhaps why they said that Donald Trump had no impact at all in this conflict coming to an end. So, from that conflict itself, it's very difficult to see what kind of impact Donald Trump actually had. If you look at Gaza, which is the more recent one, and you look at his 20-point peace plan, so far it does seem like he has done a rather good job with that. But there are still questions that remain, am I right, Qasim?
Yeah, I mean, there is a ceasefire at the moment. There are some reports that Israel has broken the ceasefire, but I don't think they've been confirmed by very, what's the word,
reputable
sources. So, for the moment, it does seem very good.
I'm just thinking about obviously the Peace Prize being awarded to Machado, and what does this actually mean for her? Could this lead to more oppression, perhaps, in Venezuela?
Well, the thing is, this Nobel Peace Prize carries a lot of weight, and I think that Maduro is going to see this as it's going to attract to him. He's going to think that we've got Nobel Peace Prize winner as the leader of the opposition. We need to take her out. And I think that is going to be Maduro's next steps in Venezuela. He's going to go on a hunt. He's going to crack down the streets of Venezuela, in Caracas, and try to find Machado, which is not going to end very well. Although, at the same time, I think that by giving the Nobel Peace Prize, it's going to be an effective use of propaganda. I think that, the opposition will feel that their efforts are being recognized. That's for sure. Do you agree? And also, so, but the question I really have is, do you think that they can actually overthrow the dictatorship? Because I think another really key part of Machado is she's non-violence. She, Mahatma Gandhi, for example, they will not resort to violence in their protests. They will just rally in the streets, they will put up signs, but they will never go to violence. Do you think that they could actually defeat Maduro with this non-violence concept? Or do you think that he's going to stay in power for longer?
Well, I think it's a very complicated issue. And taking down a dictator in any way is always something that is very difficult. And you rarely see this happen in a peaceful way, especially in many countries. So, and even with the Nobel Peace Prize, I mean, some people in Venezuela may see that as her receiving assistance from the West, because this award is somewhat viewed as a Western award, is it not?
Yeah, definitely.
So I think it will still be very difficult, and there's still so many obstacles that need to be overturned.
Yeah. Congratulations to Maria Machado, and we wish her the very best of luck in her opposition campaign. The last segment of today's podcast is the India-UK trade deal that happened earlier this year in July. So what actually was this trade deal, and what are the important things behind it?
Yeah, I think this is a really significant trade deal. It's one of the biggest trade deals between these two countries in a long time. So what this basically means is that it removes the tariffs on around 99% of all the goods coming from India.
Wow.
So that's obviously
Quite a lot. Yeah.
it's quite a big number. And this removes tariffs on goods ranging from luxury cars to food to medical products. You can really see the wide range of goods and services covered under this. And Well, this basically would this would massively increase the British GDP by around, I think it's $4.8 billion. And obviously, Britain and India, they do have a very close relationship as well. I think right now, there's 150,000 Indian students which are studying in Britain. And people with Indian heritage in general make up 3% of the British population, which is a very substantial amount. And
speaking of,
yeah, exactly. But how else can we assess the Indian-British relationship historically as well?
Well, obviously India got its independence in 1947. Since then, they've mainly traded via the Commonwealth, which is obviously agreement, and it's a kind of group of all the countries that used to be part of the British Empire.
Yeah.
So you've got countries like Australia, Canada, Pakistan, South Africa, for example. But since Brexit in 2016, they have been forced kind of to trade more with India because obviously they're not part of the European Union anymore. So this has led to increasing economic diplomatic relations. However, militarily it's not really been the same. So we can fast back to 1971, where the UK, they weren't very pro-India. In fact, they supported their obviously biggest rival, which is Pakistan, in the 1971 Indo-Pak War. However, since around the 1990s, they have been looking to India as their main ally in subcontinent. This is obviously because the idea that I think Pakistan in that time had been very militarily focused and quite a dictatorship, allying with a lot of eastern countries like China. So this has led to India being increasingly close with the country. And India's economy has been growing, as you said, which makes them one of the biggest exporters of many types of goods in the world. So yeah, I think it's been a great deal for both countries, and I can only see benefits coming from it. Do you think there's any drawbacks? What do you think?
No, I don't think there's any drawbacks as such, but one of the really interesting things I took away from this is how India does seem like the bigger player in this. So, I mean, in 2022, India did pass the UK in terms of nominal GDP, which really affirms their position as a superpower. I think right now, in terms of in nominal GDP figures, they sit fourth, while Britain sits sixth.
Yeah.
So there's a gap growing, and this really showcases India's position as the bigger player in this relationship.
And that reverses it reverses the dynamic, which obviously India used to be part of the British Empire, and obviously in the history of the two countries, there's been a lot of kind of tensions in when India were part of the British Raj. There was a lot of massacres, there was a lot of wars. So this is quite interesting to say that India used to be part of the Britain, but now you can say that India's got a bigger and faster growing economy.
Yeah, exactly. And when Britain had like a heavy reliance on India, especially to bring jobs to the British economy. So one thing that they asked was that some Bollywood films would be filmed in England. Yeah. So they signed a deal with a major film producer called Yash Raj Films. Yeah. So obviously one of the biggest Bollywood film producers out there currently. Yeah. And they are bringing around 3,600 jobs to Britain while filming 2 Bollywood films. So that's really substantial.
It is. What's quite interesting though is India has always been a very big Russian ally, isn't that right? So since obviously India's independence, they have been quite close, which is quite interesting. India's obviously also very close with America, so they've got these 2 main superpowers in the world, both being allied. So what do you think in terms of what kind of could happen next in diplomatic relations in India in general?
Yeah, I think especially following the Russian-Ukraine war, you've seen many Western countries boycott Russia and place different tariffs on Russian goods. And this meant that Russia has been able to give oil directly to India at a heavily reduced price. This is obviously something that Keir Starmer is against, with the United Kingdom being allied in some way with Ukraine. But for Narendra Modi, this is a bit of a balancing act between keeping Russia happy and getting the cheaper oil from there, but also not making sure that relationships with the West do not fall down. Going back to the trade agreement, I think that for Keir Starmer especially, this is very, very good. Obviously, he's under a lot of pressure right now. If you look at the polling, he does trail Reform UK by a significant amount. So he needs to make these key changes to try and gain some of that favour back. However, as I mentioned earlier, the impacts for consumers, with you being able to see a wider range of goods from India at a lower price, it is likely that this will take some time to come into effect. And it's also likely that you may not even see the reduction in prices entirely. It depends entirely on what the firms choose to do with those prices, or whether they choose to take a larger profit for themselves.
Yeah, and Keir Starmer, you're right, he's been under a lot of pressure. Like, I would say that he's had probably, like, not the kind of reign that everyone would expect. Obviously, Labour, this is like their first kind of term in a very long time. So you would think that with that they would try to make a big impact, but you really couldn't see that, could you? So this is this is really important for Keir Starmer if he wants to kind of retain his image, I think.
Yeah. Well, this is very good for Keir Starmer, and overall, I think a good trade agreement for both sides. And both sides are looking to further this in some way, but we'll have to wait and see what happens.
We'll have to wait and see. And thank you very much, everyone. That concludes episode 2 of the Current State podcast. We're very happy to have brought this to you with video, a special guest, a different setting, and different microphones as well. We hope to see you next episode. See you then.
Thank you, guys.